So, I've been sitting around lately among the boxes and boxes of models and figures in my room, waiting for the truck to come to move them to the new home. Since we're moving this month, I've sort of had time to look at each and every model and figure in my collection. Now, most people would say, "Oh Lord, Ed, you must have spent so much money on this collection." And most people would be wrong. Most of my collection is gifts, trades, and originally, none of these came to me factory sealed. I like receiving things that are used. They tell a story. And when they arrive to me, a new chapter is unfolding for them. And I love that about my collection. Each and every single object here has a story. And I know them all. That's why I love my shelves, my collection. It's like a big storybook. So today I'm going to share with you a few personal stories about my collection and the story behind a good bunch of my figures. This will be lengthy, but hopefully you enjoy it. And I think about the question I'll leave with you at the end. But this is my story. This is my Gundam story. First thing I think I'll bring up are a few MSAA figures. When I was about 10 years old, my school had a strict policy of bringing no toys in. We, as most children do, decided to forget the rules and sneak in objects. At lunch, a friend by the name of Micah pulled out a Strike Gundam out of his pocket. I didn't even know what it was at the time. It was just a cool-looking robot, but I was mesmerized by it for some reason. We would take it apart and exclaimed to the lunch monitors that it was a model of some sorts, and they stupidly believed us. I had asked him to borrow it, and I remember playing with it all night. Eventually, until a joint in the leg broke, I panicked, and I apologized the next day to him, and in return, I got him a yo-yo, and I gave him $5 and bought him a cookie at lunch. And a few years later, I was 13, and I was hanging out with him again at his house, which is odd because me and Micah really weren't too close of friends, but, I lost my spot. Oh yes, we're rummaging around his room, and, found a couple, just cool stuff. We were looking all around his room, and I found a ground-type Gundam and an EZ-8. And, the ground-type and the EZ-8, they were both missing their shoulder pads. And I didn't really care. I didn't care at all. I actually found the shoulder. Again, I had no knowledge of Gundam at this time, so I didn't really care. And I found a little shoulder, and it was the shoulder pad to a Dom. And I put it on the shoulder of the ground type, and I thought it looked cool. Ironically, it had the Xeon logo on it, but I got it after a bit of asking. And the same year, I remember going to Toys R Us, and they had a huge Gundam SIA sale, because it was kind of going out. And I found myself a Battlestar Bull Gundam and a Strike, and those were the first Gundam toys that I ever bought in a store. And I, again, had no idea what Gundam was at the time. I just really liked robots, and I really liked Transformers, so... And, when I was about 14, my parents split up. It didn't really faze me too much since I saw it coming, but it still depressed me. We had moved into an apartment on the opposite end of town, and I couldn't complain at all. It was great. I had a huge room all to myself. There was a dollar store right down the street, and I was on the second story of the building. I loved it. I even had a roof I could go onto. After we moved in, my mom decided we needed to get out and explore a bit. Plus, we needed a dining room table since we'd been eating on the counters and the couch every night. At least it seemed that way to a whoops. I'm reading from a script here and I just skipped a line. Let's see. We went to the flea market. It was about an hour drive, but it was definitely worth it. The place was huge, at least it seemed that way to a 14-year-old. I was excited. I was just getting an anime at the time, and I was really looking for absolutely anything related to Japan to add to my collection. After wading through tables of old power tools and Beanie Babies, and getting yelled at by the weapon shop owner for fiddling around with nunchucks, I found a tent next to a food tent that I hadn't seen before. I looked around, and I was digging through a box of Legos when I looked over and I saw them. 2 boxes. one with a robot with a familiar-looking yellow crest on its head. I immediately snatched them and asked the old man selling them what he wanted for them. He smiled, probably at my giddyish excitement. "Ah, the old Gundam model," he said. "Normally I'd sell that Zaku for a pretty penny, but you seem so excited I'll give it to you for free if you buy the Wing Gundam. How's $5 sound?" Now me at the time, not having the slightest fucking idea what the hell a Zaku was, or what the hell a Wing Gundam was for that matter, because I hadn't even looked at the box. I probably would have figured out what they were, but I was so excited I hadn't even read the titles. Me, again, I had no idea what they were, but I decided $5 sounded like a good deal. So I happily obliged, gave the man the last $5 I had in my pocket that my mom had given me for food that day, and ran, clutching the boxes in my hands. Not wanting to tempt myself, if I found any more cool stuff, I went to the parking lot. I plopped down on my mom's trunk, and I opened the box, excited to see a figure, a toy of some sort, but instead, my heart sank a bit. A model? A model? I looked at the trays of parts in the baggies. Damn it, I blew my last $5 on a model. I don't have any glue, I said sadly. I studied the box after slightly pouting for a moment and saw the little no glue needed picture and kind of kicked myself in the ass. I called my mom and asked how much longer she'd be. Apparently she was trying to get a deal on a dresser and a new table and still had about 8 aisles of tents to wade through, so I was going to be there for a while. I looked back at the box. I was really upset because I was really expecting an action figure or something. But I looked at it, and I figured, well, I have nothing better to do. So I opened the little plastic baggies and started popping out the plastic pieces, putting them together. And I had no idea what I was doing. No cutting mat, nubs everywhere, and I even snapped the peg connecting the front skirts accidentally. And I finished the little guy. The 1/144 scale Wing Gundam. And I stared at it, and I was really, really proud and just happy with just feeling a feeling that I've never gotten from a toy. I built this. I made it with my hands. I loved it and played with it all afternoon, on the way home, when I got home, in my room that night. I felt proud to have made something. I created it, you know? My first Gundam. I was thinking, it was a feeling of security after my parents had split, knowing that I could actually create something, that I could change something, you know, from being in little pieces back up to something whole, something to take off my mind off the emptiness of my apartment. It really calmed me for some reason. About a year later, or should I say maybe 6 or 7 months later, January, right around my birthday, I remember I decided to get another Gundam, and I chose the Granddaddy, the RX-78-2, because I'd done a minor bit of research, and I know that that was the original Gundam that started everything, and me being an anime fan, and hadn't even seen the anime, I just figured, well, I might as well have one. It came in the mail, and I was really excited, because I was checking the tracking, and I knew what day it was coming on. And I was hanging out with a group of friends at the time, and we all met at this pizza place in town called Luigi's. After school, we would always walk there, but I left a little bit early after class and went to my dad's first, where I got my mail, grabbed the Gundam out of the mailbox, and met them at our usual meeting place, which was Luigi's. I popped into my seat that I normally sat at, in between the twins, and I began opening it and looking at the parts. A few of my friends were curious, 1 or 2 laughed at my nerdiness jokingly, but I shoved it off and happily looked at my Gundam. I wasn't going to let any teasing put this box away. I even left early that day to run home and build it. Now 2 of the kids in our group were twins, Jimmy and Jesse, a boy and a girl, and their parents worked right down the street from where I lived, and we usually all walked home together, since pretty much we all lived in a strip, kind of going separate ways as we walked, and I was the last one in the strip, so I was always the last one to get home. I talked about Gundam all the way to this one girl, Jessie, the female of the twins, who would later become my girlfriend for about 2 or 3 years. And I remember hugging her, and as she left, and then leaving, going home to work on the RX-78. I really don't know why this memory is particularly nice to me. I just remember walking home in the bright white snow on a nice winter day with a cute girl and an RX-78-2 in my hands. As most single moms do, they seek a mate eventually. When I was 16, my mom found a boyfriend. Nice guy and all, but I was really, really wary of him. I liked the guy. I mean, there was nothing wrong with him. He had an awesome job, was going to college, and he was just really smart, good looking. But having another male in the house after 2 years of having just me stressed me out a bit. I mean, it would stress anybody out. Any male, at least. Male dominance is built into us for no apparent reason. And it sucks, but oh well. Around this time, I was also conflicting with myself, blaming myself for my parents' separation. I was struggling, and for my mom to get a boyfriend at the time just really didn't settle with me for some reason. She had been seeing him for a few months, and winter eventually rolled around. My mom and I didn't see each other a lot, because she worked nights at the local pharmacy, and I went to school in the day. So I'd come home around 4 o'clock, and she'd leave around 4:30, 5:30 for her job. So we didn't really see each other a whole lot. And now that she had a boyfriend, she was usually on the phone with them, and she saw me even less. Now, as a lot of you know, I'm a type 1 diabetic. I got it when I was 7. Me and my mom went to diabetic checkups out in the city every 3 months. That was about an hour drive. And it was really special because my mom took me. And that's part of the reason why my parents split up. When I was in the hospital, my dad never came to visit me. He just never showed up. He didn't really want to deal with the stress of having a problematic child, I guess, since that I was a diabetic, and he didn't understand it, and really wasn't willing to understand it, so he never showed up. Me and my mom went to diabetic checkups out in the city every 3 months, and that was just, I don't know. But my mom took care of me the entire time I was in the hospital and recovering from it, and she still did. She took me to every single one of my checkups. My dad never won. It was a special bond we had since she was there for me when no one else was. I was homeschooled when I was diagnosed, so I really didn't have any friends. So, whenever we took the hour drive out for my checkups, we would go shopping, we would go out to Friendly's and eat dinner. Sometimes we'd see a movie, and definitely never missed a trip to the anime store, where she would always give me $20 to spend, which was awesome. We ate curly fries on the way home. Oops, skipped a line again. I remember this one day finding a random Cherubim Gundam model in the shop. It was the only one they had, so I immediately got it. It was a really good day. We ate curly fries on the way home. And then, this one time, we were going one December afternoon on a Friday after school. We left, and I got my blood work and checkup done at the hospital. My A1C had gone up a few points, but it wasn't too bad. And her boyfriend showed up when we got to the mall. She was preoccupied with him pretty much the entire time, and it crushed me, because that was our special time together. That was like the only time I really had with my mom that we bonded, and now there was somebody else there. And it crushed me. I was buried with a mixture of several things that just made me so upset I couldn't help myself. Now, yeah, I know what you're thinking. I'm selfish for being upset, and no, I'm not. I was extremely happy for my mom. I was really glad, but it was just really hard to have somebody else there. And I don't know. I checked my YouTube on my phone because I had a Droid, and a guy by the name of Gundam Legacy Extreme, or Chris, had been talking to me. We were friends on YouTube since I had my YouTube channel up for about a year. Turns out he had actually gotten me something, and it would be in the mail that night once I got home. We drove home, and it was really dark. It was 8 at night and snowing heavily, but not too bad. It was drivable weather. We got to my dad's, and I went to check the porch where my packages usually were, and I saw it was inside. Now, I haven't seen my dad in years, since we moved, probably. And I think I keep forgetting if I was 16 or 17 at the time. I think I was almost 17, so pretty much 3 years. I knocked and my dad answered the door, and I was mixed with hurt emotions from him not showing up to the hospital and not seeing him in so long. He handed me a little box and said he brought it inside because he didn't want the snow to get it wet. I looked at his face, and I could just tell he was really lonely and sad. It was the loneliness of just having your family gone. And the guilt had piled up even more. I hugged him, and I told him I missed him, and said I would come visit soon because I would have another package. I left, and I got home. I went to my room and opened the box, revealing a little MSIA Gundam, the RX-78-2, the first one. Chris got me the last one they had in stock at BigBadToyStore.com. I cradled the little toy, just looking at it. I was mad at my mom, and my dad, and myself. I was piling guilt on myself over everything, and it was just the normal frustration and confusion of a kid with split-up parents. For the first time since we moved, I broke down, and I bawled like a child holding onto that Gundam in my arms. It made me feel really good to have something to hold on to that night. The Gundam was the only thing I was really sure of anymore. My YouTube channel, the Gundam community, and Gundam itself hadn't let me down. It never faded away, it never made me sad. Everyone in the community had accepted me and never turned their backs on me. And I fell asleep holding it. I don't remember a lot from that night after I got home and started crying. I just remember that the snow was falling outside and me lying in that room clutching my Gundam, trying to understand the whole relationship between me and my parents. A couple years went by. Girlfriends on and off, friends faded away, and it was a really crappy time in school. I was 17, and I was heading into 11th grade. I hated school. I hated it with a passion. I'm not a person who enjoys sitting in a structured environment, and that's exactly what school is. I knew I wanted to be an artist, and around that time, I had a good Gundam collection, an awesome YouTube channel with lots of friends there, and I was sort of squeezing into a group of people I hung around with because I really had no one else to hang out with. I was looking into alternative programs for schooling, and besides homeschooling, which I had tried before and really did not like, I found a program called BOCES. A lot of people said it was a form of education that people took to drop out or just squeeze by in high school, like an easy thing, an easy way out. It wasn't. I took a tour of the facility and it was amazing. I was interested in going into the graphic design program, so basically I went in and I took the tour and it was amazing. State-of-the-art computers, $3,000 DSLR cameras, and Photoshop at my disposal for 2.5 hours. I jumped at the chance. The program worked by basically taking half of your school day, being transported to the campus, taking your 2-hour course, and coming back to your home school. So basically, my schedule was I'd have 3 classes in the morning, eat a lunch, take the bus on a 30-minute ride to my campus, take my 2-hour class, then take the bus back to town and be done for the day. And it wasn't just my school that could take it. It was pretty much all the schools around the district could get transported there, and we would all be mixed into the programming. So a lot of other kids from my school would be in... or a lot of other kids from different schools would be in my class there. It was fantastic. It offered a college experience and an overall freedom that you cannot get in high school, and I blossomed as an artist immediately as I got there. I didn't really talk to many people in my class over the first 2 months, but by the end of the 2 years that we were there, we all had grown into a family that was closer than any other friends that I've ever had. It was really great, but that's another story. One day in December, a short-haired boy in a yellow hoodie walked into the room, quiet as a mouse. There were plenty of available seats, but I was being the jumpy, peppy, friendly one, as I always am, and I offered the new boy to sit next to me. He sat down, was quiet, and seemed shy. He poked around his computer a little bit, looking at a few different programs, and then he just kind of sat there, not really doing anything. I was flicking through some Gundam photos on my computer on GundamStoreandMore.com, planning my Christmas list, and he exclaimed loudly, the first thing I ever heard the boy say, "You like Gundam too?" I whipped my head around and quickly smiled so wide that my face hurt, and that was the beginning of my friendship with Connor. He collected robot Damashis since he was never really good with models and brought his baggie of them in the next day. He even let me borrow a few. We eventually became to be great friends, went on adventures exploring abandoned buildings, old boat factories, driving around his hometown in his mom's van, taking pictures of Gundams and Damashis at different places all around his town, and helping me out with a lot of my photography. But those are some more stories for another day. Connor went so far as to even bring me a Gundam cake in for my 18th birthday. He literally brought it into BOCES in the morning, because in the first year, we all had BOCES in the afternoon, but since it was the next year, it switched, and the senior class got the morning BOCES. So in the morning, he brought me a Gundam cake for my 18th birthday. I remember that day. We all sat around at our computers, all 18 of us, and just watched Gundam age on the big screen in our classroom. It was one of the most amazing days ever. The cake even had crossbones on it. They were my favorite Gundams, and still are. He even gave me an Age 1 Damashi as a birthday gift. Connor's a loyal friend. He reminds me of a puppy or something as much as he talks and follows me around. He's the most talkative person I know, which is the complete opposite of what he was the day he walked into the classroom. But he's a loyal friend. I can always go to him no matter what happens, and it's really rare to find a fellow Gundam fan and such a good friend rolled together into one person. To this day, we still hang out and play with our little Damashis together. Gundams and school mixed into one for me. In the last 2 or 3 years of high school, I went from working on SD kits and lunch to working on master grades in my art class. I'll never forget the day I finished my master grade crossbone full cloth in my art room. I displayed it proudly on the art room on a shelf, and everyone who walked in thought it was amazing. "You built that?" they all exclaimed. "Yep," I said proudly, and everyone just thought it was the fucking coolest thing they'd ever seen. I expanded and would always have figures with me, on my desk in some classes, and then at lunch, explaining the entire story behind the mobile suit to all of my friends sitting there, usually 8 of them. While most people would hide their obsession with little robots to blend in high school, I was proud of it. I wore it openly and made a name for myself with it. Astonishingly, I was never really picked on. Even if it was by some person, I really didn't give a shit about him. Who cares? I never let it get to me because so many people actually found my Gundams interesting. And the people who found it interesting mattered to me far more than the people who didn't. And the coolest thing was, people knew they weren't Transformers. They were Gundams. Everyone knew they were Gundams because the word had been thrown around our school so much because of me. It was fantastic. And to go out with a bang, I even had several of them on display my senior year in high school in the art show. I worked on a bunch of them all year to make sure they would get in. So in high school, I was never afraid to be me, which for some reason most kids do. I was proud of my models. Heck, I remember even building my master grade Strike Nor in a school detention that I got for being late to school 3 times in a row. I could ramble on with a million other stories about my figures. Stories each one of them have, like the Cerevi my ex-girlfriend got me all by herself, and the G1 Transformer a friend gave to me as a sign of friendship when he came back when we went tubing. And maybe someday I'll tell all those stories, but for now, this is where I'm going to end it. It's almost 3, actually, it's past 3 in the morning, and I need to go to sleep. Maybe someday I'll tell you about the other stories, but what Gundam gave to me primarily was hope, and a sign that I could create and change things. A sign that I could make difference with something in my life. Taking all these little broken pieces off the ground that were shattered, kind of resembling how my life was at the moment, and then building them into something more epic than my words could ever describe. And that's what I did with myself. I picked up all of the broken pieces that I was, and I built myself into the person I am today. A proud, Gundam-building, long-haired, brown-eyed boy by the nickname of Ed. And I will never change that, because Gundam is infused into me. That's what Gundam is to me. It got me through all of the dark times of my life and really gave me hope. And hope is a sign that you have the ability to make change, and that's what Gundam is to me. Hope. And a symbol of peace that you can put yourself and all your trust in. When everyone else is gone, Gundam was always there for me. Now, not the show, or the toys, or the models, or anything else, just the essence of Gundam. That's what I'm talking about. That's what Gundam is to me. So now, it's your job to tell me your story. What's Gundam to you? Make a video response, or a really long comment, because I'm pretty sure you can sum it up in one comment, telling me what Gundam is to you. You can share your personal stories, you can share any kind of story that you want, but just tell me, what is Gundam to you? Is it just fun to collect? Is it a fun hobby? Or do you do it with passion and everything else like I do? Thank you for listening to my story, and I'm sure that I'll tell you many more stories to come if you guys like this one. So thanks a lot, and again, I really haven't said this enough, but thank you to all my subscribers, and a big thank you to the Gundam community, every one of you. Henry, Prime92, Vegeta, Robert, I think I said Henry twice. Henry is Vegeta. Meads, Kuro-sama, there's too many to list, just everybody. Sebastian, Mike, I just really thank you, and I wouldn't be the person I am today if I wasn't on the YouTube circuit and hadn't joined the community. The Gundam community and Gundam, again, have really changed my life and made me into a really great person, and I really value all of you for that, and I cannot repay that in any way. So, hopefully, I'll keep making videos that entertain you guys, and I'll just keep sharing the love of Gundam.